So tell me what you know about Callaway.
Okay, so I know that Callaway creates innovative high-performance golf equipment, as well as sporting wear, and that you guys do give back to the military by supporting their endeavors and any type of incentives by giving them discounts on your equipment, as well as donating to veterans.
Okay. So have you ever been required to work with other departments in your organization?
Yes, I have. Basically, last company I worked at, we had to work together, obviously, because it's a company. So there's going to be different projects that we have to work together on. For instance, I worked at operations, to where even though we did most of the operations stuff, every now and then I would go and work in quality, since some of that stuff sometimes intertwined because they're dealing with customer service and the quality and performance of the company.
Okay. So how many employees were in your last organization?
500 plus. And I say plus because we had people out in the field as well.
Okay. So what would they say about you?
Well, they'll say that, one, I'm a team player, two, that I'm definitely dedicated, and three, that I'm nurturing.
Okay. So tell me about a time where you were falling behind on a project or a task. What did you do to catch up?
Well, if I'm falling behind on a task, first thing I would do is try to see if there's a deadline, and have I passed that deadline. If I pass that deadline, obviously I need to communicate with like my superior or the person above and ask if I can have a little more time. If I'm not behind, then I would just have to pull in extra hours. I'm known for like actually working after hours, especially if I fell behind. I don't think that's nobody's fault but mine if I fell behind. So even though the work day might end at 5 o'clock, I will work till like 8 o'clock to make sure that I get back on the schedule that I need to be on.
Okay, wow. So how do you organize your day or week to complete multiple tasks and meet deadlines?
I put everything on a schedule. And I say that by I literally figure out, okay, for instance, if I have 8 hours to do things, I schedule each hour for a time. So maybe from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, I'm checking emails and responding back to people. From 9 to 10 o'clock, I might have a project I need to work on. I'll do that. So I schedule my time. I think it's very important to schedule it that way. Even if you might have to move some things around, you want to make sure that you have an initial schedule.
Okay. So describe a time when you were able to overcome an obstacle in a creative manner.
Okay, so I'll describe a time. For a company that I last worked at, I had to do a virtual event, and I did realize that one of the speakers, it was actually a concert. So one of the artists at that concert, when it was time for them to perform, I know the first round they had very bad internet connection, so it kind of sounded bad. So the next round I decided to actually play their music in the background instead. So I would play whatever song that they were singing, and they would just lip sing. That way we can have a smoother virtual concert.
So how do you prefer to be managed?
I didn't get that. I'm sorry. You said, how do I what?
So the last question is, how do you prefer to be managed?
Okay. I don't like to be micromanaged. I'll tell you that. I'm the type of person that does well on their own. I can work with a team, which is no problem. But I think that if I'm able to do things by myself, I'd be a little bit more creative. And so that's why I rather be able to work by myself and control my own schedule and have that flexibility.
Well, thank you so much.
Carl, could you tell me what you know about the company?
So I did relay, and actually your founder, and what I really enjoyed about Mr. Callaway's journey is that he didn't necessarily start with Callaway Golf. He actually worked his way up in the textile business after World War II, and then he actually started Callaway when he was, I think, in his 60s. And I thought that was very impressive that he didn't let his age define his ability to be an entrepreneur and invest in this company where I believe he found out about the idea at a golf club or golf resort, and he decided to invest his money. And in the last 10 years of his life, he was able to he grew the valuation to the company. I believe it was over $500 million, and he worked up to the day he died.
Okay. Have you ever been required to work with other departments in your organization?
So at Opotech, which they produce tunable lasers, I was actually a marketing intern, and it was a much smaller team, and I was required, along with, of course, my superior, the marketing director, basically, we were working with the head of operations, and we had a project where we had to film this new commercial. It was going to be posted on YouTube for this new Radiant X tunable laser. And so we had to collaborate with him. He had been on the team for, it was like 10 or 15 years, and he was an engineer. So he knew basically all the ins and the outs of the system. And we had to collaborate with him, his vision, because he was like an artist. And so you had the marketing there, and you had the engineers, and you kind of had to meet in the middle about like, okay, this is how the engineer wants, the system to look, and this is how marketing does it. Of course, marketing knows about the communication side of things. Okay, we're going to use YouTube, but the engineer knows about the system. So it's like the meeting of the minds. How do you get the creative? How do you get the kind of the people that know the nuts and the bolts together to understand, how do we best present the Radiant X system?
Okay, good. So how many employees were in your last organization? And what was
I guess the last team I was technically part of, I was an independent contractor, but I was called an intern. I was doing social media marketing for this startup located in San Diego, Forest Ranch area. And it was basically a husband and wife duo. They both were working in corporate America, and they decided after the shutdown last year to go ahead with their own marketing agency. And so there was just the two of them, and I joined in on the team. They also had, I will say, they had other contractors working with them. Mostly their friends and part of their network. Whenever they had, a job they needed help with, they would devote some of that work to their friends located all across the U.S. because they were, it was kind of like a remote thing. They didn't necessarily have an office. They would just work from home, and then they would send out whatever they could.
Okay, good. What would they say about you?
So I would say that their name was Cravo Marketing. I think they would appreciate the work that I put in terms of just trying to, like, for example, I created a hashtag repository where it was a document of basically all the hashtags that they had used. And I would, I utilize Hootsuite I don't think I used Hootsuite there, but I was trying to utilize the tools, trying to incorporate some new ideas, and just trying to be really creative and really try to engage with the social community, Facebook and Instagram, along with LinkedIn too.
Okay, so they would say that you're very creative and you use the skills that you have to make something creative. Is that what you're saying?
I would say so.
Good. Okay, so tell me about a time where you were falling behind on a project or a task. What did you do to catch up?
I'm at a software company. It's called Nextwork in Carlsbad, and I get sent tasks usually every day before class, not before class, but before the before I start my look at what I need to get done. And there's not necessarily like a full like schedule in terms of like, oh, you have to spend like this amount of hours or this amount of time on this task. And so for me, it's all about trying to keep on top of that. And so there have been times where I've spent a little bit too much time on one thing, and then I kind of have to go back and be like, oh, I need to do this. I need to do more of this. And so for me, it's all about prioritization and figure out like, okay, what's most important? What am I kind of neglecting? And then I go back and do that task.
Okay. So how do you organize your day/week to complete multiple tasks and meet deadlines?
So I would say that on Sunday or at the beginning of the week, I tend to look ahead and see what's due. And so, for example, I would look at Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday. There's also a Saturday deadline. And I would do what's due first. So that way I can do things earlier and prevent the potential for doing things at the last minute.
Awesome. Good. Describe a time you were able to overcome an obstacle in a creative manner.
Okay, so for example, during the summer, I decided to work on my own agency, my own social media marketing agency. And I really had to think about like, how am I going to do this? And so I was a little bit antsy, to actually go to each of these businesses and directly propose like, I would like to work with your business. I have this idea for improving your social media marketing. So instead, I decided to create a digital portfolio. So I wouldn't necessarily be going directly to ask them like, hey, I want to do your social media. I would go to the business and say like, oh, I'm going to create this Instagram page for this stretch. So basically, I found a road in Vista called North Santa Fe Avenue. And I knew that these businesses desperately needed social media and online advertising. And I've been thinking about doing this for like a year plus. And so I created this profile, and I'd go in and I'd ask them permission if I could shoot pictures on the outside and on the inside. And then I'd order something, and then I would take pictures of the food and create a vlog basically. And then the next time I would go in, I would show them the results I got, like, hey, here are the analytics. And my hope was that they would see the value in that and that they'd want to sign up. So instead of going directly to them as like a salesman and try to be all pitchy, I wanted to do something that made them more comfortable with me. Like, hey, that's the kid that came in and, shared about her business.
Good. That sounds great. Did you get a few businesses to sign up?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. There was definitely some people that were interested. Like I did the 30-day challenge route, where a lot of YouTubers do is like, I'm going to do 30 days challenge, like get healthier or exercise. And I wanted to start a social media marketing agency in like 30 days. And there was like 3 people who were pretty interested, but at the end of that, I didn't necessarily get like a direct client, I would say.
Okay. What sets you apart from other candidates from this position?
So I would say it's my creativity. For example, I just know about 5 to 6 years ago, and it had been a dream of mine since I was like 10 years old. And I just really enjoy, taking pictures and, doing graphic work, and for me, that's what I can bring to the table with like social media is I just really like to design things. And that's what attracted me to marketing in general is just being able to express myself and to really draw people's eyes in. It's like a mix of entertainment and business. So that's why I like marketing. And I think that's what I can bring to the table for Callaway.
That's awesome. In your last role, how many people were on your team and where did you fall in the ranking?
Okay, so the last role, I was at Cravo Marketing. I was technically intern slash contractor, and basically my expectations were to post 3 times a week on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Another expectation was to engage with those communities, and also potentially do like competitor analysis, along with just pretty much scheduling like what's going to happen in a week, like a content calendar type thing. And those were my expectations as an intern.
So how do you prefer to be managed?
Okay, so for me, I like my sense of freedom too. Like I don't want to be constantly like someone looking over my shoulder, seeing if I'm doing the right thing, because then it will make me feel nervous and second guess like what I'm doing. Like, am I doing it right? And then I'll be less encouraged to be more creative. So I like to be like independent to kind of have that leeway. However, I definitely like structure because it allows me to know like, what do I do? And so if I have that structure, then it's like, okay, this is what I do. And then I can create like my own little spin on things.
Well, good, Carl. So you, that's the last question.
Yep.
We just have to do the scorecards and do our discussion. So what I'll do, let me go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.